Hi everyone, welcome back to this AZ-900 Azure Fundamentals training. If this series is helping you learn Azure, please like this video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next lessons. In previous lessons, you learned about cloud concepts, architecture, services, and security in Azure. We talked about compute, storage, networking, databases, identity and access, and network security. In this lesson, we will focus on two topics that are very important for both the exam and real-world projects: cost management and service level agreements, or SLAs. By the end of this video, you will be able to explain what Azure Cost Management and Billing is used for, understand the basics of budgets, alerts, and cost analysis, describe what an SLA is and how it relates to service availability, recognize how combined SLAs affect overall solution availability in AZ-900 scenarios. Here is what we will cover in this lesson. First, we will briefly recall how Azure pricing works at a high level. Second, we will explore Azure Cost Management and Billing, and how it helps you monitor and control your spending. Third, we will introduce service level agreements and common availability targets. Fourth, we will see how composite SLAs work when multiple services are combined in a solution. Finally, we will connect these ideas with exam-style questions. Let's start by quickly recalling Azure pricing. Earlier in this course, you learned that Azure uses a consumption-based model, also called pay-as-you-go, where you pay for the resources you actually use. Your costs depend on many factors, including the type of service you use, the size and configuration of the resource, the region where it runs, how long the resource is running or how often it is used, additional options like storage redundancy and data transfer. Azure also offers different pricing options, such as pay-as-you-go, reservations, and sometimes spot pricing. All of this is great for flexibility, but it also means you need tools to monitor and control your spending. That is where Azure Cost Management and Billing comes in. Azure Cost Management and Billing is a set of tools that help you track, analyze, and optimize your Azure costs. At a high level, cost management allows you to view how much you are spending over time, break down costs by subscription, resource group, resource, or tag, create budgets and alerts when spending approaches or exceeds a threshold, identify cost drivers and possible optimizations. Billing, on the other hand, is about invoices and payment methods, billing accounts and scopes, how charges are organized for your organization. For AZ-900, you are not expected to know administrative details of billing accounts, but you should understand that cost management and billing is the main place to see and control costs in Azure. Let's look at some key features of Azure Cost Management. First, cost analysis. Cost analysis allows you to visualize your spending over time and filter by different dimensions, such as subscription, resource group, service type, tags, like environment equals production or department equals finance. This helps you answer questions like: which subscription is spending the most? Which resource groups are generating the highest costs? How much are we spending on storage versus compute? Second, budgets. A budget lets you define a spending threshold for a specific scope, such as a subscription or resource group. For example, you can create a budget of $500 per month for a development subscription. You can then configure alerts to notify you when your actual cost, or your forecasted cost, reaches certain percentages of this budget, such as 80%, 90%, or 100%. Budgets do not automatically stop resources, but they help you detect when spending is going beyond plan, so you can take action. Third, recommendations and optimization. Azure Cost Management can highlight cost-saving opportunities, such as underutilized virtual machines that could be resized or shut down, resources that are idle or not used, Potential savings from reservations or better pricing options. While AZ-900 does not require deep FinOps knowledge, you should know that cost management provides insights to help reduce unnecessary spending. If an exam question asks how to monitor and control Azure costs, or how to set up alerts when spending reaches a threshold, the best answer is usually Azure Cost Management and Billing. Now, let's talk about Service Level Agreements, or SLAs. A service level agreement is a contract that describes the level of service a provider commits to deliver. In Azure, SLAs typically define uptime or availability targets for a given service or feature. For example, a service might offer an SLA of 99.9% availability per month. This means that Microsoft commits that the service will be available at least 99.9% of the time in a given month. And if this target is not met, the customer may be eligible for service credits. Higher availability targets usually mean less downtime. Here are some common availability numbers and their approximate maximum downtime per month. 99%, up to about 7 hours of downtime per month. 99.9%, 3 nines up to about 43 minutes per month. 99.95%, up to about 22 minutes per month. 99.99%, 4 nines up to about 4 to 5 minutes per month. You do not need to memorize exact minutes for the AZ-900 exam, but you should understand that more nines mean less allowed downtime and higher reliability. SLAs are defined per service and sometimes depend on configuration. For example, a service might provide a higher SLA when you deploy it across multiple availability zones or multiple instances, compared to running a single instance. Some tiers, such as free or preview services, may not come with a formal SLA. If an exam question mentions that a feature is in preview and asks about SLAs, the correct answer is often that there is no official SLA for preview features. Now, let's talk about composite SLAs. In real solutions, you rarely depend on just one service. You usually combine multiple services, such as a web app, a database, and a storage account. When services are used together, the overall availability of the solution is affected by the availability of all components. If each component must be available for the solution to work, the combined SLA is calculated by multiplying the individual availability values, expressed as decimals. For example, imagine a simple solution that depends on 2 services. A web app with an SLA of 99.95%. A database with an SLA of 99.9%. To estimate the combined SLA, you convert these to decimals. 99.95% equals 0.9995. 99.9% equals 0.999. Then you multiply them. 0.9995 times 0.999 almost equals 0.9985. Converted back to a percentage, this is about 99.85% availability for the combined solution. This is lower than either individual SLA, because both services need to be available for the solution to work. This idea is important for AZ-900, because it shows that adding more dependencies can decrease the overall availability of a solution if you rely on each component being up. On the other hand, you can sometimes improve solution availability by building redundancy. For example, using multiple instances or regions. As long as the application can continue working when one instance fails, you do not need to solve complex math in the exam. But you should understand the concept that composite SLAs can be lower than individual ones when every component is required. Let's connect these ideas to exam-style questions. If a question asks, which Azure feature helps you monitor spending, create budgets, and receive alerts when costs exceed a threshold? The answer is Azure Cost Management and Billing. If a question says, A company wants to estimate expected availability and understand how much downtime they might experience per month. Then you should think about SLAs and availability percentages. If a question describes a solution with multiple dependent components and asks about the overall availability, you should remember that combined SLAs are usually lower than individual SLAs when all services are required for the solution to function. If a question mentions that a service or feature is in preview, you should remember that preview services generally do not have a formal SLA. Let's recap what you learned in this lesson. You learned that Azure Cost Management and Billing helps you track, analyze, and optimize your Azure spending using tools like cost analysis, budgets, and alerts. You saw that budgets allow you to define spending limits and receive notifications when costs or forecasts reach certain thresholds. You learned that service-level agreements define availability targets and potential service credits when those targets are not met, and that higher availability percentages mean less allowed downtime. You also saw that composite SLAs for a solution can be lower than the SLA of each individual service when all services must be available at the same time, and that preview services typically do not offer an SLA. These concepts are essential for planning reliable solutions and keeping costs under control in Azure. If this lesson helped you, please like this video and subscribe to the channel to support the content and to follow the next lessons in this AZ-900 series. In the remaining videos, we will explore governance tools like Azure Policy and management groups, and monitoring solutions like Azure Monitor and Advisor, so you can complete your preparation for the AZ-900 exam. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.